We are recording. Guys, today I'm really excited to introduce you, and many of you already know Makayla, and she did this for us last year as well. And we were almost a year ago to the day when we were in the thick of the quarantine. Makayla is now preparing for some summer meets and getting ready to prepare for the 2024 Olympic trials and hopefully take another shot at making the Olympic team. Today, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to ask her any questions, but I'm going to lead the way for the first 5 or 10 minutes, Makayla, and then I'll kind of let you take it over. The first thing that I want to go over is just the biggest question that our parents have about progression in this sport is that they want their athletes to be fast tomorrow. And you and I both know probably better than anyone that it is such a long learning process. What is something that you told yourself, and maybe I don't even know about, when we were going through the process of getting you to the national level together? What are some things, because I had to really work on teaching you to be patient with your swims. When you were younger, when we went to every meet, you wanted to win every event and you wanted everything to be a best time. And that's just not how it works. So talk to us a little bit about the process.
That's a good point to start with because I'm currently going through that right now, trying to get back into shape. I actually took about 4 months off from swimming. My last meet that I swam in was in January, and just decided I needed to take a mental physical break. So that's the longest I think I've ever been out of the pool since I started swimming. And I am currently getting my butt kicked and I'm getting beat in practice by everybody. So it's definitely something that I am going back and trying to remember how I dealt with years ago when I wasn't patient, because it's something that I'm definitely struggling with because practice is where I love to compete the most. But I think looking back at it, what I really had to learn was to focus on the things that I could control. So I had a tight lower back when I was younger. And so I would try to focus on, okay, let's work on my technique today to make sure that I'm not hurting my back. Or, okay, my stroke isn't feeling great. I'm not going very fast. Maybe I push my underwaters a little bit more today. It's trying to focus on something that does feel good and look for something that does feel good and try instead of looking for all the things that are going wrong. Because even if your times aren't improving, you can still improve in some way that like maybe you're not going to see those results within a week or a month or even a year, but down the road. Like there's many things that I did in age group club swimming that are just now starting to show up in my career, that I worked on. So like for example, distance test sets, lactate sets, those are things that a lot of people don't do. And when my coach, Mark Bernardino, was like, all right, 8 400 IMs on 445, everybody's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, I've done several 400 IMs before. So you might not think that the things that you're doing right now are going to help like 10 years down the road, literally 10 years. I'm getting old. But yeah, definitely just try to break things down a little bit and focus on what you can get better at, even if it's not your times for that specific amount of time that you're struggling.
There's no doubt about that, Kay, and I'm so glad that you mentioned the distance test set because they start again tonight. So there's just
Good
in the
luck,
back of your
guys.
head. And we're, for the first time ever, we're doing it short course meters. We changed the pool over, so instead of 6 500s, we're going 6 400s because we're in meters now.
Nice.
So the senior prep athletes who are mostly on this call right now, you guys are going 4 400s. The senior group, you're going 6 400s. So it's the start of the distance test set. And for a lot of the senior prep group, Kay, this is like their first year in senior prep. So this is really their first time earnestly through the distance test set progression. One thing that you and I did one time, just to create some challenges for you, because when we would host meets or things like that, sometimes there wouldn't be the best competition. Talk to the kids about some of the things that we did to make meets where we knew you were going to blow everybody out of the water, but we created some challenges for you, and talk about why it's so important to learn to race even when there's not competition.
I think I definitely learned that from practice, racing like Kai Wisner or Andrew, or I'm trying to think of somebody that you guys might know that has a relative or sibling on the team, but just some of the older guys that I trained with when we were in high school, just trying to race them and stay with the guys because they didn't like it when I beat them. And I think for meet wise, um, knowing my competitors and knowing their strengths. So if I knew that, like, okay, maybe this person's best time isn't as good as mine, but I know that they like to take their races out really fast. I usually didn't take my races out really fast. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try something new, take my race out really, really fast, and then see what goes on from there. Or if I was racing someone that had really good underwaters, my underwaters aren't super good. My walls aren't excuse me, my walls were never like my strength. So it was like, if I'm racing someone that they might not be as fast as me swimming wise, but they have better underwaters, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to beat them on the underwaters or try to push my underwaters a little bit more. So just trying to find something that is my weakness and trying to improve it to match my competitor.
Definitely did that. And there was a couple times where in the 800 free short course meters, you did the 800 IM.
Yes, I do remember that.
Kay, one thing that we used to do to kind of build your confidence was when we went to big meets, and not nationals, but we went to Speedos and we went to some of those bigger meets, not the biggest meet, but bigger meets. We would enter you in every single event. Talk about why that was so important to your development.
That's definitely important, and it definitely helped me, especially with like even college recruiting. I know that you guys are still like a little young. Some of you guys are a little bit older, but um, when college coaches see that you're willing to do every event, even if you're not the best at every event, that's something that is really valuable to them because they may just need someone as like a place filler for a 200 breaststroke just to get like a point or two if it's going to be a really close dual meet, or they don't have a lot of milers and they just need someone to kind of build up a distance group. So that was definitely something that helped me a lot getting recruited in college, and also kind of helped with my confidence and training because I was like, okay, I've trained for every single event. So when you get to college and it gets a little bit more event specific, I was like, okay, I've done mile training. I can easily do a 200 fly practice. Like if I can do training for a 400 IM or a mile, going down and doing stuff that's a little bit smaller and a little bit more specific definitely helps with my confidence. And I also just think IMX was a big thing for me when I was younger. I don't know if you guys still do a lot of IMX points and stuff like that, but just trying to be like super well rounded in like 200s of stroke or hundreds of stroke to help with my 200 and 400 IM, because 400 IM, I probably since I was like 12 or 13 years old was always my best event, and I just knew that that was just where I was headed. But I knew that I didn't want to be a one event person, and just having other events that I could kind of lean back on. And even with my experience with the ISL this past year, I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's the new International Swimming League that is kind of helping professional swimmers earn a little bit of money and get some extra racing and traveling in on like the off years from the Olympic year. And just being able to swim more than one event helped me get recruited to be on a team there as well. So it definitely is very, very valuable being able to do more than just a 200 IM or a 50 freestyle, where you can just kind of do whatever the coach needs you to do.
We planned a lot of that, Makayla, in your development. Even at Olympic trials, we did time trials. Remember, you won a lifetime best in the 100 back at Olympic trials, and that was not your best event. But it was so important for the 400 IM to swim those different events fast and be able to get experience doing that. One
And
thing that
even like if you time trial something like that, like a 200 backstroke, maybe you're not going all out and swimming a 200 backstroke strategy, but you're swimming at the strategy that you want for a 400 IM. Or maybe you do a 500 freestyle where you're focusing on kind of like a longer 200, or you swim a 200 freestyle, but kind of like a condensed 500 freestyle strategy. So just working on like front end speed or back end speed. So you're not really as concerned about your end result time because that's not your best event, but it's something that you can help with your strategy for your best event.
Talk to the kids, Kay, about as you get older, it gets harder and harder to drop time. And during the season, you're really just trying to focus on being your best in season, because you know that when you rest, shave, and taper and you get to that big meet, that's the time to really have some great performances. But talk about how that transition is difficult, going from an age grouper where you essentially, where most of these guys are right now, every time they dive in, it's a lifetime best. Talk about when that stops, how you stay focused on being positive and being patient for the end result.
That definitely was something that was really hard for me to adjust to. Um, you go from dropping a second every time you swim a 50 freestyle to literally celebrating when you drop 1/100th, and or even just coming close to an in-season time. So like I have my in-season times. I know like, okay, before I start resting, before I start tapering, like a typical time I want to hit at an in-season meet or a dual meet, and that's something that I definitely learned a lot about different body types, different muscle capacity type thing really impact that. So I have a lot of friends who I swam with in college who are really, really bad in season because they are bulky, big, muscular sprinters. Excuse me. I got something in my throat. Sorry.
I'm not going to edit that. I'm going to keep it in.
I don't know what's happening. Sorry. um, well, I have like a lot of friends that are a lot more muscular, a lot more taller. I'm very short and don't have a lot of muscle. So I'm a pretty good in-season swimmer because I don't have to wait for that taper and that muscle recovery. But then you have other swimmers where I'm like, why are you like, I thought you were good. Like, why are you going so slow in a dual meet? And they're like, at the end of the season, NCAAs, they're like getting top 8 at NCAAs. And I'm like, you just have to keep it kind of all in perspective of each person is very different. And when they're going to pop off those good times is going to be very different in the season. And there was one other point that I wanted to, about dropping time. Splits. You may not drop time overall, but you may have a better split in a third 50, or I might have a better backstroke split in my 400 IM. So say I added 2 seconds in a 400 IM, my backstroke split could have been a second faster. I'm like, all right, my backstroke is improving. So I know that that is a good point that I've been doing and working on in practice. Now I need to work on where I added those extra 2 seconds. So even if you're not dropping time overall, you can look at the parts in a race where you are dropping time.
That's such a great point. And really thinking about where we can get better inside of our races and not simply get so overwhelmed with what our time is. We're trying to learn how to get better. Okay, talk to the athletes about how important being a great teammate is, especially in club swimming, where sometimes, both parents and athletes forget that we are a team and we have team goals. And that this program has always been very team driven. So talk about why that's so important and what you learned from the great teams that you were a part of at Victor Swim Club that you took into college.
Definitely the friendships, like my closest friends. Like I just texted one of my best friends from high school today, actually asking how they were doing. I swam with him. Like we don't live anywhere close to each other. I think the last time we saw each other was like 2 years ago, but we still keep in contact. And it's just really cool being able to kind of create that network. I have friends from all over the world, so many different countries. I got people in Egypt, South Africa, South America, all over Europe. And it's just super, super cool to be able to be on teams with them as well. Like when I was on LA Current last year, we represented so many different countries. And just with Victor Swim Club as well, I remember like the relays that I was a part of. And I knew that going into college, I was probably never going to be on a relay because I'm not a sprinter. And I was going to a kind of like a very well-known sprint school. So I was like, I know that I'm not going to be on any relays. So I'm really enjoying the time with my teammates to be able to be on these relays. And honestly, I think I got more excited for when my teammates did well than when I did well. Like thinking back to meets, I can pinpoint so many times where a teammate touched the wall and they're like, oh my gosh, like that did not just happen. Kai Wisner in like a time trial of, I think it was like a 500 freestyle or something, some distance event at Georgia Tech, I think, or somewhere in Georgia, a meet we were at. And I just remember his reaction. I don't even remember the swim. I don't really remember the time, but I remember the emotion that went with it and how that kind of led the momentum for the rest of the meet. And going out to team dinners after meets and just kind of, I don't even know how to explain the feeling. And it's definitely something that you don't even really get. I mean, you get it in college, but it's different. You go to kind of the same school. Here, you're going to different schools and you're getting to meet people from all over different parts of where you're from. But in college, you're always together, training and whatnot. But here, it's just you go to meets and I don't know. It's just something that you guys should really take advantage of and be grateful for all the friends that you've created through club swimming.
Yeah, I can't wait because this younger group, the older group's doing a great job considering we haven't had any like travel meets other than going down to Virginia for Speedos. They did a great job, and this young group is a big, dense group. There's a lot of athletes in there, and we're already planning some travel meets. Age group zones is going to be back at a pool where you actually won the 100 freestyle at zones as a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, I think. You broke a minute for the first time,
Yep.
100 free. And that age group zones is happening this summer. So hopefully we'll have some kids going to that. And that was always a big travel meet for us. And then the IMX games next January. That'll be our first really big travel meet, I'm guessing, once we're kind of post-COVID and everybody's vaxxed up. So, Makayla, talk about balancing high-powered academics. You're a very good student. You were #1 in your class at NC State last year. Talk about balancing academics and athletics.
Definitely something that is very difficult, but I think swimmers out of any athletes do the best because we, from a young age, have such a structured schedule. We have to be to practice 15 minutes early so we can stretch. We have to be in the pool at a certain time. And we kind of just have this internal clock of when we are supposed to be doing what. And I think the motivation and the hard work and dedication that we know we have to put into swimming just kind of flows over to school. I mean, I'll admit school's not always that fun. It isn't, but it's something that when you get to college, you start studying things that are really interesting to you. College is a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, at least for me, when you get towards the second half where you're in your major and really focusing on classes that you enjoy and what you want to study. So getting through high school and trying to figure out what you want to do and using that motivation and dedication from swimming and just kind of letting it flow over and having a set schedule. So we know swimming takes up so much of our time, right? And we're always exhausted after practice. We never want to do our homework after practice. So I was like, I know I'm going to be tired. All I want to do when I get home from practice is eat and go to bed, right? So I knew I needed to do my homework before I went to practice because if I waited to the last minute, I wasn't going to want to do it. And then I wasn't going to be able to do it to the best of my ability. So just kind of knowing when you're going to be mentally at your best state based on your swimming schedule as well. So I tried to do a lot of my homework during my study halls, taking advantage of that awkward 5 minutes at the end of class where the teacher ends early and all your classmates are kind of just talking. I'd be like, all right, I can get like 5 math problems done right now. I don't have to worry about it when I go home. I can eat an extra snack when I go home instead of doing my math homework. So just kind of trying to take advantage of that free time that you have so you don't have to really stress about it.
And learning to manage that time is so important. And these guys are going through that now. What's one thing that you wish you had done earlier in your swimming career that you kind of learned later on?
With time management or just in general?
Just in general.
Well, this one's kind of just like a joke, but learning how to use a snorkel. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to my mind, but I just remember my first practice where you were like, Makayla, you need to learn how to use a snorkel. I had never used one before. And he put me in a lane by myself, and I was bobbing in the deep end for 30 minutes trying to figure out how to breathe with a snorkel because I could not figure it out. Um, but on a more serious note, something I wish I would have learned. I think I took swimming a little too seriously when I was younger. And I didn't allow myself to have like a lot of fun with it. And going into my later high school years and college experience, I've learned that the more fun you have with it, the less it feels like a burden. And it's more of like, it is my job right now actually, but it doesn't feel like a job. It's just something that I get to do and I have the privilege of doing, and I get to do it with like all of my best friends. So I think realizing that earlier instead of being something that I have to do, it's something that I get to do. And it's just awesome that you get to go hang out with your friends for 2 hours, and yeah, it might be a hard workout, but feeling so like rewarded afterwards, and just kind of understanding how hard, because you guys, it might not seem like you work hard because you've been doing it for so long, but you guys, like looking at any other sport in college, like you guys, swimmers work the hardest. No other sport is up at the break of dawn, like training as hard as we are. And just being able to take a step back and realize how hard you guys are working and just be proud of that.
No doubt about it. And I mean, you have been a great example for athletes on that. You were in a tough situation growing up because, we were so involved in the sport, but talk to the athletes about why it's important that it's their goals and not their parents' goals.
That's definitely super important because I don't know who, like, out of all of you guys whose parents are swimmers or not swimmers, but they don't understand, okay, you can't go best time every single time. They don't understand how hard practice was on Friday night before you had a Saturday meet. They don't understand that your body is super, super tired. They want the best for their kids, and they think that the best is going a best time, right? And that's normal. It's no shame to your parents at all. They just want to see you do well. But sometimes you have to like talk to your mom or your dad and be like, listen, this past week was the hardest week of practice we've had yet. My body, I've never felt this tired before, and it's okay, I didn't go best time. I learned how to overcome that really, really hard practice, and I maybe had some really, really good practices like during the week, and then I just didn't have a good meet. But just being like consistent, I think, is the most important thing, and being verbal with your parents about what you are okay with and what your goals are, and how, like, I know Mike talks a lot about trusting the process, and it may not come one season. I had I think it was like 3 seasons in a row where I really wasn't going any best times. I got to college, first year and a half, I got slower. I was like, what's happening? I was like, so you're supposed to go to college, you meet all your friends and get super, super fast and start lifting weights. I got slower at college, and I was like, all right, I need to make a change. And so I looked at my situation by myself, and I made a decision that I needed to change. And then I talked to my parents about it. And lo and behold, a year later, I dropped 10 seconds in my 400 IM. So, and that's unheard of when you're 21 years old. So it's just something that you have to be open and honest with your parents about. If something is uncomfortable, or you feel like there's too much pressure and you're not enjoying it because of that pressure, then maybe just take a step back and be like, I need to remember why I started swimming. That's kind of what I did this past 4 months. January, I was like so focused on making the Olympics. I was like, everything that I did every single day, I was like, oh, this isn't going to help me make the Olympics. Oh, this isn't going to, like, it was overwhelming. And I was like, this isn't why I started swimming. I mean, yes, it's everybody's goal to make the Olympic team, but that wasn't like why I started swimming when I was 6. I didn't swim. I was like, all right, in 2021, after the COVID pandemic, I'm going to make the Olympic team. That's not why I started swimming. I started swimming, and I love swimming because of what it brought me. So I kind of had to take a step back, 4 months off, and here I am, my first week back from training. And Yeah, so it's not gonna be an easy road, and your parents, it's just hard for them to understand it sometimes, but just be open and honest with them.
I remember one time we had just finished winter juniors, and you had probably had the best meet of your life. Anchored at 800 free relay 148. It was your senior year, and you said, Mike, I think I need like a month off. And I'm like, yeah, right. No way. There's no way we're doing that. And you're like, no, like I really need it. And we did. You took about 3 weeks off, came back, and then you went from 451 or 452 in the 400 IM long course to 446 that same year. And so sometimes guys, like, you need a little time to kind of reevaluate and assess and take care of, things that you don't necessarily think are important, but they end up being really important. And that's, your mental health. You want to make sure that you feel like you're in a good place, that you're enjoying it, because when you're not enjoying it, this is the worst sport to do when you don't enjoy it. Practices are 1,000 times harder. Your relationships are 1,000 times harder. It feels like everything's falling apart, but sometimes you need just a little break. And we trusted Makayla to do that, and she came back better than ever. That was an awesome meet too in Buffalo. Okay, talk to us about what it's like now being a pro, and it's a place that very few of our athletes will ever get to. But what is it like working, being a swimmer? Your full-time job is to be a swimmer. You work for Fitter and Faster Swim Tours as an elite clinician, and you've made the national team, and so you're doing this for a living. Talk about what it's like. How's it different?
Well, actually, today, I guess, is my official first day of being just a professional swimmer, and I don't have to worry about being a student as well. So, this is my first day on that journey, I guess. But it's definitely a lot different and a lot harder than I was expecting it to be. You have to hold yourself a lot more accountable. You're not required to go to any practices. I mean, your coaches are expecting you to be there, but it's not like you are letting anybody, like a team, down. You're just letting yourself down. And it's something that was super, super hard, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning just for myself. It was a lot easier when I had a team that I knew I wanted to do it for. And I knew we had a team goal that I needed to perform at my highest. So that way the team could also achieve at their highest as well. But with COVID happening, my first pro year, it was super, super hard because when you're a professional athlete, especially a swimmer, when there's not really, I mean, the ISL is just starting to like grow, but really the only focus for professional athletes is really making the national team and making the Olympic team. Obviously we have like worlds and Pan Ams and some other events here and there, but really the sole final goal of being a professional swimmer is making the Olympic team. So when my first professional debut was when COVID hit, I didn't get my last NCAAs of college, and I didn't get to go to Olympic trials in 2020. And last year I could put, I don't know, I could put my life on the fact that I was in the best shape I've ever been in. I was ready to go. I was pulling like 104 repeat 100 fly long course in practice. Like I was ready to go. And not being able to prove to myself and show what I was preparing for was super, super hard, especially going into my professional debut with ISL, and just kind of making a name for myself. Because in the swimming world, like, you kind of have to make a name for yourself, because it's not like at the NFL or NBA where there's just money being thrown all over the place. You really have to make a name for yourself, whether that be through your personality, through your really fast relay splits, or cool tattoos that you have. You have to make your mark somehow. And doing that while in COVID was super, super hard, but I think it made it a lot more valuable coming hopefully out of COVID in the next few months.
When you think, Kay, about what it's like to be a professional athlete and what some of your goals were when you were younger, are you sometimes like amazed that you're still doing this after all these years?
Yeah. I my last 2 years of not high school, of college, people would always joke like, "Oh, Makayla's the girl that's never gonna stop swimming. Makayla's the girl that she's just gonna stay here until her body doesn't let her swim anymore." Like, and then once COVID hit, I was like, I don't know, like maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Like it's a lot. And I like counted back. I think it was like 17 years that I've been doing this. And I was like, that is a long time. um, and so I sometimes I'm like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to do it. Maybe it's time to move on to the real world, or the real life as people call it, of getting an adult job and working for a company or whatever and using my degree. But at the same time, like if I'm still enjoying it, might as well do it as long as my body will let me do it, because eventually that's not even going to be an option. So might as well take advantage of the time that I have now to continue doing it while I can.
How long do you think you're going to go? Is this like I know right now you're planning for 2024, but one thing that you did when you were a little kid, you did a report on Dara Torres, that age is just a number. Is Makayla Sargent going to keep swimming, doing some open water events and just keep on keeping on?
Maybe for fun, but I don't think I would do it at the level of Dar Torres. No, I don't think I could do that. Just going through the training that I've been through, and my body, I don't have the best mobility with my shoulders and my hips. I just think that would be probably not the best idea. But I definitely think at least through 2024. And then, I mean, being a pro, it's nice. Like, I took those 4 months off and now I can come back. And if I want to do ISL, I can. If I don't, then I just stop swimming. It's not like I'm not like expected to do anything. It's just kind of what I want to do. So I also applied for a scholarship to teach English in Italy for next fall. So if I get that, I'm going to be there for 8 months. It'll be really hard to do doubles and training while I'm there, while also getting that experience. So I might take another 8 months off, and then maybe if I want to come back and train for 2024, I will. So there's just a lot up in the air, but that's the nice thing about doing it as a pro. You can kind of just do what you want.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I'm not sure if the kids will have questions, but I do want to open it up in case any of them do. If you guys have a question, you can just unmute yourself. And if not, that's fine too. Looks like Owen's going to have a question.
How do you prepare yourself for like a race, like mentally?
Honestly, I try to be as goofy as I can with my teammates before races, because if I think too much about my race, I overanalyze it and then I freak myself out. And I also tell myself, okay, so if I'm behind the blocks for a 400 IM, I'm like, all right, I've done 1200 IMs in practice. I can do 400 IM. Or for you guys with distance test sets, if you're behind the blocks for a 200 freestyle or a 500 freestyle, you can be like, all right, I've done 1,000 in practice before. 200 freestyle, no, that's easy. So just kind of talking to yourself in a positive way and not asking yourself, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Just kind of visualizing what you want to happen and saying what's going to happen to yourself instead of questioning, oh, what if I miss this wall? Just kind of keeping everything really light and really positive and not overthinking it.
And that was a skill, Kay, that it took a while for you to develop that, right? We got to go through some uncomfortable moments to develop those skills.
Yeah, when I was younger, I was a spaz behind the blocks. I think I asked timers in like the 3 surrounding lanes what event I was swimming to make sure I was going to swim the correct event, because I was so nervous that I was like forgetting what I was swimming. So that was definitely something that I had to work on, and it's not something that comes easily for everybody, but I just tried to become a really, really goofy person and just laugh with my teammates, and it just made things a lot easier.
You did this a million times.
Yes. I think my goggles were like indented in my head for like ever after swim meets, because I just would press them on so hard, so afraid that they were going to leak. And my goggles have never fallen off. I had no reason to worry.
Anybody else have questions? Ben Baggs, you got a question? Can't think of one. Mandy? Okay, talk about discovering what some of your weaknesses are. You talked about underwaters, and then really putting a lot of emphasis on that in practice, because when we got to Italy for World University Games and I was watching you warm up, I said to myself, they must have spent so much time working on our underwaters because they were so much better. They weren't on par with that elite level, but they were a lot better. So why is it important to focus on our weaknesses in practice?
I think it's super important to kind of find someone that your weakness is their strength and try to match them in practice as kind of like a reference point, because I really didn't even know what good underwaters were. I just knew mine were bad. Um, so when I got to college, I was like, okay, there's a lot of people who are 200 backstrokers, 100 backstrokers. They have really good underwaters. Ask them for pointers. Like, you don't always have to get your advice and your pointers from your coach. You can ask your fellow, I almost said classmates, teammates as well. And also just being kind of open with what you want to work on with your coaches, because sometimes they might not even know. I mean, when I came to NC State, they knew my they knew my underwaters weren't good, but until I pointed it out, they didn't realize just how much I was getting beat off every single wall. So really pointing it out to your coaches or to your teammates, and they can also hold you accountable too. So for certain sets, my coaches would be like, all right, Makayla, you have an extra underwater kick than everybody else off of the wall. You have 5 kicks off every single wall, or double pullouts on this IM set, when nobody else was doing that. And it was really, really hard, but they were holding me accountable to something that I said at the beginning of the year. And also, doing this at the beginning of the year is also really, really important, because when you get tired and when you are in the middle of your season, you're not going to go up to your coach and be like, all right, tell me to do 2 more extra underwaters off every single wall, because you're tired, right? But if you tell them at the beginning of the season, when your mind is fresh, your body is fresh, and you know what your goals are, they're going to hold that accountable for you, or they're going to hold you accountable for the rest of the year. So that way, middle of the season, when you're dropping 2 kicks, you're like, all right, you told me at the beginning of the year what your goals are. I know those goals still stand even though you're tired. So really addressing those at the beginning of the year is something that's super important. And I know for me, an example of that, every Tuesday night was 400 IM practice. And Dino, my coach, was just super notorious for giving us repeat 400 IMs at the end, like all out. Like it'd be like, all right, how many are we doing today at the end? And it was really just to tire us out and to test us mentally. But I went up to my coaches at the beginning of the year. After the first one, I had a really good set. I think we did like 4 total, and I held under 420 on all of them. And I was like, all right, the rest of the year, don't let me go over 420. If I go over 420, make me do another one. I was like, that's what I want. And I knew that I wasn't going to ask for that halfway through the year when I had done 1,400,000 IMs. But at the beginning of the year, I was like, all right, the rest of the year, I want to hold under 420. So that's just an example of what you could do.
No doubt about it. Kay, I'm going to ask you the closing questions that I ask all the guests on Coach's Corner. So I'm interested in your responses. All right.
Okay.
So, all right. And one of them is near and dear to your heart, I know, because you're very close with the Dressel family and you know Caleb. Is it going to take a sub 21 second performance in Tokyo to win the men's 50 free?
Honestly, with Caleb, I don't doubt it. Like he surprises everybody, even himself. And I think he put in a lot of extra work this year, when he had the time and the opportunity, when he wasn't having to compete as much, and just taking a lot more time to train. He just got married. Like he's got a lot of excitement going on in his life, and I think feeding off of that, I wouldn't doubt it.
When you went to the Dressels for Thanksgiving about 5 or 6 years ago, when you couldn't come home, how much dessert does Caleb Dressel eat?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. I just remember how goofy that family is and how how welcome they made me feel. And I remember that Caleb's brother hit me in the face with a frisbee. Those are the takeaways of my Thanksgiving with the Dressels.
All right. So I remember one time you were 15. We were in Austin, Texas at the Grand Prix. We sat next to Katie Ledecky. She was having a really big breakout meet. Does Ledecky break 8 minutes in the 800 free in Tokyo?
Yeah. Yeah. She's a beast.
All right. Here's one. Here's another one. Your weight training partner at Florida once upon a time was Ryan Lochte. Does Ryan Lochte make this Olympic team?
I hate to say it, but in his events, there's just so many young up and coming stars. I don't know. There's just the events he swims are just stacked. Like I don't know. If he does, good for him, and like that's really impressive, especially with having 2 kids now, and just a lot has changed in his life since the last Olympics. But I personally wouldn't bet on it.
Who is the hardest worker you have ever trained with?
Oh gosh, hardest worker I've trained with. The first name, I don't know if this is like, I'd have to really think about it to maybe get like my most sufficient answer because I've just been all over the place. But the first name that came to mind when you said that was Olga Laptiva. I swam with her at NC State. She's from Russia. She is the most determined person I have ever met, and she does not let anything stand in her way. As soon she had a job lined up with what bank? Not JP Morgan. What's another like
Merrill Lynch,
no
a big one.
Goldman Sachs. She had a job lined up with Goldman Sachs before she even graduated from college. Moved out to California, has her job. Like she is just very determined to do everything the best as she can. And she wasn't like a star swimmer, but she definitely worked her butt off.
That's awesome. Who do you think is an athlete that not a lot of us have maybe heard of that you think is gonna like just explode at Olympic trials? Who's your dark horse pick to make the team?
To make the team? I mean, I have to say my roommate.
Yeah, we're all rooting for Ali Tetzloff to make the team.
Yes, I have to say her, of course. I'm trying to think of any other names that kind of come to mind. I've been so out of the swimming world the past 4 months, just trying to like distance myself, just to kind of clear my mind that honestly I'm kind of blanking. But
Somebody from Wolfpack Elite.
I think Justin has a really good shot. I think Justin's got a really good shot at making it.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. I know the athletes and families will get a lot of views off of this. I'll keep you updated on that. We will put this up on our YouTube channel today, and it'll be sent out in an email to all of the Victor Swim Club families. And it's really good to see you. And I will see you on Thursday night. It's going to be late.
Sounds good. Can I take a screenshot really quick with you guys?
Please.
Is that okay with everybody? So
Yeah.
I can post it.
I made a thumbnail that I'll send to you too if you want to use it. Got it?
Got it.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys and have a great practice.
How can they get in touch with you if they want to follow you on Instagram?
Think it's Makayla_N_Sargent.
Yeah.
So give me a follow if you want.
Let's get you verified in the next year.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
All right, guys. I'll see you at practice. Kay, thanks so much. I'll see you Thursday. Can't wait.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.